Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Waring, the Director of Education at the Carl, and thank you for joining us for Love Without Bounds, an Intersection Allies book about families, written by LaToya Council, Chelsea Johnson, and Carolyn Choi. By focusing on the choices families make to persistently love and care for one another in the face of inequality and inequity, Love Without Bounds is a necessary resource to make sure all kids feel seen and loved for who they are in the community with each other. Emphasizing that love is what makes a family, Love Without Bounds asks that we respect other people's families as much as we do our own. We are so happy to have the authors here today. And before I pass it over to them to share this beautiful book with us, I will just give a couple updates. First, we always love to hear from our guests, so feel free to use that chat button to say hi, tell us where you're connecting from. If you have a favorite picture book, we'd love to hear it. Please share it in the chat. Throughout the program, keep an eye on that chat because I might be adding some links that you might be interested in learning more about books and resources. We also have the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you have questions for our authors during the program, we'll have time at the end to respond to questions. If for any reason you're experiencing any difficulties and get cut off, we'll get back online as soon as we can and just use the link shared in the Zoom reminder to reconnect with us. And tonight's program is being recorded, which is great. So if you miss any part or if you participate with us and realize this is fantastic, I need to share this with other colleagues and family members and educators, we should have it on our YouTube page next week. So without any further ado, I will pass it over to Chelsea, Carolyn, and LaToya.
Thank you so much, Courtney. We are so excited to be here. Good evening, family. We're thrilled to launch our newest book, Love Without Bounds, an IntersectionAllies book about families. But before we dive in, let's take a moment to get settled. I know lots of people are coming from work. Maybe they just hung up a day of Zoom calls. Maybe you were Zooming around your neighborhood. So we can take a moment to arrive a little bit. I'll pass it over to my sister friend LaToya for a little exercise.
All right, good evening, everyone. So happy to be here with you all. So we're going to do a quick little exercise that we often do with the kids that when we read the book to them and engage with them. So I want you to take your hands that are out in front of you like this. Yeah, those two hands. And I want you to turn to your right. If you have a neighbor, wave to your neighbor to your right. Say, hey, neighbor. It could be your pet. It could be your plant, whoever, whatever. And then I want you to take those same hands and wave it to your left and say, hey, neighbor, how are you? How are you doing? And then take those same two hands. I want you to wrap them around yourself and give yourself a big squeeze like this. Awesome. And then take those same two hands and put a smile on your face. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sister friend Chelsea, I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right, so first we'll introduce ourselves. Who are we? Well, my name is Dr. Chelsea Johnson. I am one of the co-authors of Love Without Bounds. I use the pronouns she and her. I grew up in the Chicagoland area as the only girl in my family. I see my brother on the chat, hi. And a mini me to a mom who I watched balance lots of ambition with lots of commitment to my siblings and me, which made me very attuned to how gender impacts work and family life. That inspired my journey to feminism and my current work as a researcher in tech. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. LaToya.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. LaToya Council, and I use the pronouns she and her, and I was born and raised in North Carolina. And so I consider myself to be country at heart because that is where I grew up. And it's very, very rural, my part of North Carolina. And now I am an assistant professor of sociology and Africana studies at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Carolyn.
Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you. So excited to be here. I'm Dr. Carolyn Choi. I use the pronouns she, hers. I originally hail from the city of Angels, Los Angeles. I am the eldest child of a Korean immigrant family, and I've always been very passionate about sharing stories about the Korean American experience. And that's what actually pushed me to where I am today as a postdoc researcher at the UCLA Center for Korean Studies. So excited to meet you. So we are here today to talk about our new book, Love Without Bounds, an IntersectionAllies book about families. We are looking forward to engaging, learning, and talking with you all. So please get your fingers ready to join in the chat box and to pipe in when you have something to share. But first, a little bit about what you can expect today.
All right, so during today's book reading, we will, of course, read the book and discuss the process of making Love Without Bounds, but we will also go into why families and loving without bounds are important. And we'll end today's meeting and launch with some Q&A. So we can't wait to hear from each one of you on the call.
All right. So Zoom family, YouTube family, meet our family. So we are CLC Collective, a group of sociologists that started at the end of 2017 when we were just PhD students. Remember 2017? Interesting times to say the least, right? We were coming off a very divisive election, and many of us were feeling alienated, surprised, scared, and uncertain. Gender, sexuality, race, migration, and economy were top of mind for a lot of folks. Our training in sociology was helping us explain why so many people felt excluded from greater society. But a lot of the nuanced conversations we saw were very limited to researchers and academia. So we came to realize that we were uniquely situated to help people make sense of the systems and situations that shape their lives, and decided to double down on the cause to break down academic and public barriers and divides. And so that's when we turned to writing our first children's book, Intersection Allies, We Make Room for All, and later and now, Love Without Bounds. Ever since then, we've been teaching folks all around the world about feminism, intersectionality, diversity, and equality, from libraries, Zoom rooms, classrooms, to boardrooms.
Now, we believe that our books are special because they're a mix of children's literature and what we do as academics. Each character in Love Without Bounds is based off of academic research, including the books pictured here. You can see them, citations of some awesome scholars, and interviews with people and community members represented in the work. In fact, some of the families in the book are named after real-life families. And we transform that research into narratives and rhyme using words that almost anyone can understand, so that as many people as possible can have access to theoretical tools that can help them better understand themselves and their communities. By teaching and writing social theory for non-sociologists, we want to help make academic concepts more public, accessible, and collaborative.
All right, so as sociologists, we think a lot about how social factors like identity and culture and the government shape how families show and experience love. So that's why we wrote about families through the lens of intersectionality, which is a feminist concept that describes how things like race, class, gender, and citizenship can impact whether or not people have the freedom to create families and love who they choose. So in the book, as you'll see, we show how things like prisons, unjust laws, and national borders can separate parents from their children and families from their communities. Stigma and stereotypes can also make people feel ashamed about who and how they love. And this was especially top of mind for us when we were writing this book. We were writing this at a time when Roe versus Wade was being overturned and many people's rights to choose when and whether to start a family was taken away. So Love Without Bounds asks us to reflect on how social forces impact the most intimate details of our lives and to do our part to celebrate love in all forms.
Too many of us don't ever get to see families that look like ours and us in the media, or hear real stories about the ups and downs that come with being a part of a family. That was certainly the case for the three of us. So in part, we also wrote this book for our younger selves to honor our diverse experiences of family. As we worked on the book, we reflected on our own families and how we felt when we experienced the loss of a parent due to incarceration or death, or by divorce. And even now, the feelings that arise as one of us transitions to parenthood. We also wrote this book for you in hopes that you see that while your family is unique, you're not alone. The joy, heartache, hope, and grief you have is important, valid, and meaningful.
So that's exactly why Love Without Bounds celebrates the people we love and who love us. Since there is no single type of family that is normal or best, we use the word families instead of family to honor all the people who are important to us throughout our lives, as well as the infinite forms families take around the world. In the book, you'll meet families created by chance and families created by choice. Families of many sizes, cultures, and circumstances. Some families spend time together every day, while other families find ways to love each other across distance and time. Families are more than those who are related to us by blood. They are the people and groups that make us feel at home. Not all given families are present, affirming, or comfortable. And we show in this book through depictions of divorce, incarceration, and chosen family. In short, the message we're trying to convey is that family is often complicated. It can be confusing, loving, scary, all at the same time. And we want young readers to know that through the course of life, they may lose, find, and rediscover people who can affirm them and who love them without bounds.
All right, so enough talking. Let's read the book. But we want to hear from you afterwards. So we're going to prime you with some questions we're going to ask. So as you read, we want you to think about if you relate to any of the families in this book the most, which ones and why. How do governments and the law shape how people love? That's our sociology question. We couldn't help it. And what does it mean to love without bounds? So without further ado, let's get into the book. Here we go. Take it away, Dr. Carolyn.
This book is about your peeps, your crew, your folks, your kin, your chosen few. Everyone has family, but each is special, as you'll see. Yours and hers, his and theirs, some big old groups, some tiny pairs. No matter the size or situation, it's love that serves as the foundation.
Some families include more than a few. Some families are just teams of two. Grown-ups and kids, moms and dads, all families are lovely if love's what you add. My fam is mom, mama, and me. We're a nuclear family. Mom sings me songs, mama tucks me in. I feel their love through the time we spend.
Our dearly beloveds have gathered today to witness my parents' wedding day. My wise abuela, my sneaky pet cat, my out-of-town auntie, so fly in her hat, friends who hug and primas who play, siblings, uncles, and neighbors, hooray! A joyous feast in celebration of a family on the cusp of creation. The beat of the music, the laughter surrounds.
We are a family. We love without bounds.
My folks told me the coolest thing. Next year, I'll have a new sibling. What will they like? How will they be? Will everything change when it's not just me? One thing's for sure, I'll do my part and share the love that's in my heart. And when the baby starts to grow, I'll teach them everything I know. Through thick and thin, through lows and highs, siblings can be the best allies. Okay, pausing here for a moment to note that all families grow, shrink, and evolve over time, whether due to birth, passing away, separation, adoption, or marriage. And change can bring up lots of different emotions. So for me, my family is actively growing right now. I'm about to have a new baby pretty much any day. Sometimes I'm excited, sometimes I'm terrified about all the different things that are about to happen to me and all the responsibilities coming my way. So I'm curious for the folks here, can you all think of a time when your family evolved and how that made you feel? And Carolyn, I know you can kick us off.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Chelsea. So for me, I'm the oldest of two daughters, and I remember being so happy when my sister was born. My mom actually told me to pray every day if I wanted a sibling. So I did for years. And so we have a 7-year gap. And the day she was born was one of the happiest days of my life, and still is. She's my best friend, although right now we are not talking at the moment because that kind of stuff happens. But yeah, that was one experience where my family was changing. How about you? Anyone in the chat?
So Jane says, my family shrunk when my first husband died suddenly and then grew when I remarried.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing, Jane.
Okay, while we give you all a moment, we'll keep going. Oh, as children become teenagers, so many shifts as children grow. Totally, our roles change in our families, how we relate to one another changes in our families, and we change ourselves as we live through life with our families. Thanks for sharing. Okay, I know sometimes some of these are coming just to us and some to everyone, so totally up to you. And Rebecca mentioned my family grew when we welcomed a friend who is family into our life. I love that. We're going to talk about chosen family in a little bit too.
My sis was born in the Midwest, but my life started with a quest. Just like a vine joining a tree, I was adopted into my family. After praying and waiting and lots of wishing, they welcomed me home, the peace they've been missing. 2 family trees, 1 history. My story is what makes me, me.
In my loving family, 2 legacies created me. When flower buds start to appear, our freedom holidays are here. A Seder marks the start of spring, and on Juneteenth we proudly sing, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Over barriers that made us hurt and hide, to this place where we can love with pride. All right, pausing here also to note that many families have traditions that are passed down from one generation to another. You might see some that you recognize in the art on this page. So a tradition is something meaningful that you do together again and again. Some traditions are cultural, others are religious, and others are just for fun, like movie night on Saturday. So like on the Mayo Sachs version family on this page, my husband, Jonathan, who's in the audience, I see, and I celebrate Juneteenth, the day when the last group of enslaved Black Americans in Galveston, Texas, learned that they were legally free, news that took over 2 years to reach them. So we began a Juneteenth tradition of inviting all of our friends to our house in Minneapolis for an annual weekend of Black joy. I see Blair's in here, so she was there this year. We want to hear from you. What is your favorite family tradition, and what does this ritual say about your family values and beliefs? And LaToya and Carolyn, I don't know if you want to voice anything. while folks are getting their thoughts together in the chat?
I'll go. So I would say for my family, every Christmas, we love popcorn. And so on Christmas Day, like we'll all sit around and eat popcorn together and watch movies like after the day is done. It's a thing we've been doing since I was a kid.
All right. So fun fact before we move on, also the lyrics on this page, some of you might recognize them. Put a yes or a thumbs up in the chat if you do. They come from the Negro National Anthem, written by poet James Weldon Johnson in 1900. I'm seeing lots of yeses. Yeah. It is one of my favorite songs. It has inspired civil rights movements, Black communities for 123 years. I think it's absolutely beautiful, so much so that I know the whole thing in sign language. I do also want to shout out some of the traditions that you all have shared. So pizza night most Fridays, where a friend of ours and young adult children come to attend. Denise says that our 5-year-old and his favorites are Juneteenth and Kwanzaa, and your 6-year-old says birthdays in Juneteenth. I'm right here with y'all. Any holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Mother's Day that brings us together, or even brings half of us together. Chocolate and fondue on Valentine's Day. I would love for that to be a tradition of mine. All right, so let's keep it going.
With each generation, our love compounds. We are a family, we love without bounds.
My Nanai is just an ocean away in a place I'd love to visit one day. When the sun sets here for Grandma and me, it's tomorrow across the big blue sea. Ding dong goes the sound of our video chats. We goof off and giggle in our matching hats. Some people might think if a parent is gone, their love and care has also moved on. But the biggest sacrifice a parent can give is a sacrifice, but the biggest love a parent can give is a sacrifice so their family can live.
They deployed my dad to a faraway place, miles from our home here on the base. We watch the news both day and night. I whisper, "Daddy, I hope you're all right." We've got each other, but my whole family misses the warmth of his hugs, the itch of his kisses. We march and pray for the wars to cease so all of our families can live in peace.
Congratulations, come take your degree. You've graduated from Ally Academy. So I move my tassel from left to right, throw my hat in the air and smile bright. A bus ride away in a distant town. A big part of my world jumps up and down. When I hear his voice, I wipe a tear. Today was perfect, except I wish Dad was here. He's my biggest cheerleader, and bottom line, this achievement is his as much as it's mine. So we want to pause here for a minute and kind of talk. Some families love across space and time due to factors like migration or moving from one place to another, incarceration, deportation, or deployment. Phone calls, Zoom chats, and letters sometimes take the place of physical touch. And distance can be really hard and stressful for families. In the case of a loved one being detained or in jail, like on this page, it can almost make it feel like everyone is doing time together, which is a phrase by Megan Comfort in her work on families of incarceration. Because of the pandemic, quarantine, and social distancing, almost all of us can relate to having to reimagine how to show love to family members we were separated from. If you're like me, you had to think up some new ways to be there for the people you love. And so a question we have is, how does your family love across space and time? Can you think of an example? Chelsea, you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. I have an example. So I had multiple family members, brothers who were even here today, who had babies during COVID. I remember when my niece Mara was born, and we couldn't visit them, and we couldn't be there as quickly and as presently as we would have if it were any other time. And so we set up a virtual meal train for them and got lots of friends and family and chosen family to send takeout to their house a few times a week to lighten the load. And that has become a tradition now in our family of a way that, like, acknowledging we can't always physically be there, but we can always be there and support in other ways. So curious for those here. Oh, I hear Carolyn says, we FaceTime with my granddaughter up in Maine as we are in New York. Yes, like technology totally helps. All right, yeah, meal trains are the best.
Okay, April says, hey, April. FaceTime with my grandmother so she can see and talk to her great grandson. Oh, that's our colleague, April, Dr. Hobab.
And I know how close you are with your grandmother too. Calling a great aunt regularly over COVID as she lives alone. Yeah, we can be there in so many different ways. Writing lots of letters to aging family members who do not use computers or cell phones. So snail mail has been a fun back and forth communication with them. And also a really nice artifact to save too. To have some letters that are on paper is such a beautiful and precious thing. Okay. So some families like mine change over time. When my dads got married, our families combined. My bonus dad came with kids of his own. Who would have thought I'd miss playing alone? But we circle around to share holiday fun, giving time, getting closer together as one. Families evolve, who we love can too. We cherish the old and welcome the new.
School days with mom, weekends with dad. My parents made the best choice they had. When they split, everything changed. In fact, my entire life rearranged. Boxes and toys, new apartments and houses, new rules, new schools, and even new spouses. But in choosing themselves, they both chose me. We'll always be a family. So I'd like to pause here for a moment on baby Carolyn's page. And I wanted to introduce an important point that families aren't always warm and fuzzy and happy. Sometimes really hard things happen to and in our families. And a lot of the times we don't have a say over why. So a little bit of background on this page. My parents got divorced when I was younger, and I mostly grew up with my mom and younger sister. So growing up, I always felt ashamed about my dad not really being in the picture. And it was actually later in life during COVID and the writing of this book that we ended up reconnecting. I got to be there for him during a difficult period in his life when he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so writing this book while connecting with dad really taught me a lot about how important it is to honor both the difficult feelings I had about my parents and their separation, as well as the power and potential for reconciliation. And so that's why I decided to name the page after my own family, the Chois, as an act of closure and memorialization of everything that my family has gone through. And it was really empowering and liberating for me. And so I know this feels very heavy, but if this brings up any feelings or experiences for anyone they want to share, please feel free to pop in the chat.
Okay, so while we're thinking about that and reflecting, we'll keep going on the other side of the feelings that we shared here. Okay, so sometimes the family we're born into doesn't make us feel how we want to. And in these moments, our closest friends step in and help our hearts to mend. A pen pal, a teammate, a snuggly pup, those who care for you and build you up. There's so much of life we can't control, and our chosen family can make us feel whole. So this page is an homage to our chosen families. Sociologists also call this fictive kin, because while some families are related by blood, some families are created by choice. And we're curious here if you can tell us a little bit about who is part of your family and how they came to be a part of your life. I can state the obvious. Carolyn and LaToya are my family. We met in grad school. Well, LaToya and I met in undergrad at Spelman. So we have been on this journey for a long, long time. I guess we're coming up on 15 years of friendship, which is crazy. And Carolyn and I are cohort mates. Starting out as little beans in grad school. And we were far away from our families for a lot of that time, far away from our given families, and going through a lot of really hard stuff through grad school, which is a really, really long road. April was right there with us. And we have become each other's chosen families. So sometimes you hear me say, sister friend LaToya, sister friend Carolyn, because they've really been, and we've been witnesses to each other's lives for almost half of our lives now.
Amazing. It's amazing. Wow.
And I see Blair said, I have 2 amazing sisters by blood, but after going to Spelman, I was blessed with 4 more sisters who I love just like my family. Rebecca said, I've also have some chosen family from college, also women's colleges for the win. For the past 25 years, and they're in touch every day. Yeah, I think there's something about that time of like college life where you're becoming who you are on your own terms, and the people that you meet then are really do sort of reflect right back at you. Countless other Spelman sisters. So I see Alan says on the divorce page, I hear the word choice before I saw see Choi on the page. And saw that choice was a play on choice, maybe an Easter egg. That's an interesting one. I love it. Courtney mentioned my family lived on a remote island in the Aleutian chain, where my dad was stationed in the Navy, and our adopted brothers were in the Marines and spent holidays with us since they're so far away from their families. It's been over 30 plus years. Wow. So bringing together that distance, and also that choice, it's beautiful. Okay, passing it back to you, LaToya.
Okay. All right, so here we go. There are times we must tell our loved ones goodbye, and often too early their souls meet the sky. We honor the moments we spent together. Through our memories, they live on forever. With a keepsake or a walk to their resting place, we remember their love, their laugh, their face, watching over us each day and night. Our ancestors are our guiding light. So we're going to pause here for a minute. And we want, because here is this dedication to passing on this page. And so in this page, we show how the death of a family member can be another way families change. If you've ever experienced the loss of someone you love, you are not alone. Story time. When I was 18 and 2 months into my first year at Spelman College, I lost my mother. She had been sick for quite some time before becoming my ancestor. I miss my mom often, and as I experienced new things in life, like graduating with my PhD, working as a college professor, and moving to a new city. Shout out to Philly and the Eagles. I wish my mom was present to celebrate those achievements with me. And what helps is knowing she is my ancestor and she watches over me each day. And so if this brings up feelings or experiences for anyone that they'd like to share, please feel free to pop it in the chat, what you're feeling right now as you think about this page.
I will share something. So I lost my grandfather-in-law very recently, in late summer last year. And it was a whole, like just a big part of our lives. And one thing that helped me sort of process that was also thinking about the new life that I'll be bringing to, and thinking about the traits and values and stories and the relationship that I had with him that will live on through the new family that are coming into our family. And so knowing that we carry those stories, we carry those values and those wishes that someone had for us into the future is one way that helps me think about kind of like the passage of life and that life still goes on. And I see Carolyn says, thanks for putting the paw print there. We just lost our dog of 12 years and a big part of our lives and family. Yes, I know how that feels too. Okay. Carolyn?
So what does family really mean? They're the people who love us and make us feel seen. The folks who give us time and care by sharing with us and just being there. A shoulder to lean on, a space to be free. Whoever gives us that is our family.
There's no perfect family form. No family ever fits the norm. Although bullies and laws can make us feel shame, every family is important and no two are the same.
In faraway places or right next to you, those yet to be born and who've passed on too. Growing and changing together or apart, your family are those who live in your heart.
Should we read this together?
Yeah.
Yes.
To the loved
Loved
ones
ones we miss and the new kin we found. We are a family
we love
without bounds.
The end.
The end.
and
Okay, so we told you that we'd come back to some of the questions that we posed in the beginning. So let's talk about it. Let's learn together. So the first question that we had was, do you relate to any of the characters in the book? And who and why? Oh, thank you for we're loving the chat right now. Yes, proud mommy. 5-year-old just said bounds is short for boundaries. Yes, I love it. Carolyn, LaToya, want to talk, do any of the characters stand out to you?
Many of them. So I will say for me, one of the characters that I really stood out is in terms of the chosen family, like that spread. Like I would say going to college, and I remember when I did lose my mom at Spelman, and like a whole group of young women, my Spelman sisters, really like their parents or checking on me, blowing my phone up saying, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like I got a lot of other mothers in that process. And as I've grown as an adult, throughout adulthood, I've just grabbed more and more people in my life. I see my friend Allie Koritz on the call today, who's also in my cohort at USC, and they've become my chosen family. And so I relate to that spread, as well as my extended family. I relate to the party scene with the wedding, because my extended family is amazing, and they wrap me in love as well. So those two spreads for sure I relate to. Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to voice some of the thoughts in the chat. So Alan said we relate to the loving family. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Jenny says her 6-year-old says all the brown people remind him of himself. I love that. Jane says lots of relatable stories. She has an adopted daughter, daughter-in-law, 2 sons, loss, mixed cultures, mixed religion, mix of races, a chosen family with our own traditions, and a family that I love and relate to that I met during COVID on Zoom. Love that. Jenny says my children just added the other people that look different are still beautiful. I love that too. Janice, you're doing all the right things. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit to the loving family. So Jonathan also says that he relates to the loving family. And our second question was our sociology question, which was, how do governments and the law shape who and how we love? So this was the loving family scene. And you may have missed it, but loving on this page was capitalized and italicized to honor Mildred Loving, an African-American and Native American woman, and Richard Loving, her white husband, who were sentenced to prison for violating Virginia's Racial Integrity Act. These brave lovers challenged their case, Loving versus Virginia, all the way up to the Supreme Court, which made it so that interracial marriages could be recognized. It took another 48 years for the US Supreme Court to recognize same-sex marriages through Obergefell v. Hodges. And the Respect for Marriage Act was only just passed a few months ago to guarantee those federal rights. So laws and court cases like these, including Dobbs and the overturning of Roe versus Wade, continued to shape who and how we create families. So the law and governments are intimately tied up with the most intimate bits of our lives. And they show that the fight to choose when, with whom, and under what conditions we make families is very, very far from over. So passing it over to LaToya to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the personal is political. And so as feminists, we say the personal is political. And what this means is that our personal experiences in daily life, including how we love and whether our family forms and choices are accepted and validated, can tell us a lot about larger cultural and systemic barriers that other people likely face too. And so the personal is political impacts everyone, including you, everyone on this call. And Love Without Bounds is about the interconnectedness between the personal and the political. For example, global conflicts like wars, laws about who has the right to marry or divorce, and economic forces that create situations where parents have to choose between physical closeness and making ends meet shapes how we show love. When we share our experiences with separation, bias, and marginalization, we often learn that people who share identities with us, like race, gender, class, sexuality, and religion, have similar stories. That's because personal problems are often also social and political issues too. These patterns highlight when and where society isn't working for all of us, and more importantly, identify opportunities for change. Gotta love change.
So, what does it mean to love without bounds? And why does it matter? Loving without bounds means loving despite the barriers, biases, and stereotypes around us. It means working to change and open up those barriers actively and acknowledging that love can show up in many different forms and combinations. By encouraging readers to love without bounds, we want to inspire the next generation of young readers and young people to respect difference, lead with compassion, and actively work to create more equitable communities where those around them don't feel the need to hide who and how they love. That's what we mean when we say loving without bounds. We hope you learn today to respect other people's families as much as you love and do your own. After all, as people who share space on this earth, we are always in relation to one another all the time. We can each be each other's chosen family by pushing for change in our social systems. And finally, by honoring what we know to be true, that love is love and loving without bounds is a revolutionary act. Let's be the revolution we want to see. With love, let's make room for all. Thank you so much.
So we have about 15 minutes left for some Q&A, and we do want to hear from you. I do see that Carolyn asked Carolyn, what are the people behind you? So Carolyn, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for your question. So this was a snapshot of a classroom exercise with our first book, Intersection Allies. We Make Room for All, and which featured 9 vignettes of kids talking about their experiences of safety and how their friends as allies show up in their lives. And there was this cute arts and craft project where the students used toilet paper rolls to create the characters, painted the characters, and then, created this cool art project for their classroom. And they interacted as allies and created fun little scenarios and stuff like that. And so I just thought it was beautiful. And so I wanted to honor it and feature it as part of my background.
All right, any other questions or curiosities about the book? Oh yeah, Courtney, good question good comment about the teaching guide. So as we mentioned earlier, Intersection Allies and Love Without Bounds are research books for kids. They're social theory books for kids. So you can enjoy the story on its own. But in the back of the book, there are page-by-page notes that talk about the research behind the book. So we often end up talking to very little ones just about the story, middle and high schoolers using the teaching guide, and then talking to colleges and universities and PhD students about the theories behind the book. And the teaching guide has lots of helpful resources to help you do that too in your own family. So feel free to grab the teaching guide. And then Rebecca had a really great question about who illustrated the book and how did the images develop through the process. So which one of us wants to take that? I guess I can.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chelsea, you're a creative director, so you should start off. And I go, that's right.
Okay, so our awesome illustrator is an artist named Ashley Steele Smith. She is incredible. She illustrated both Intersection Allies and Love Without Bounds. So the process of creating the art was super collaborative between her and us, and also a bunch of different communities who, in sort of an iterated fashion, gave feedback on the book, and we asked people, what's in your home? Like, what are the things on your walls? What are the traditions that you can that we should be showing people whose lived experiences are represented? So that was super fun. In a long journey, one of my favorite Easter eggs, since Alan mentioned Easter eggs, is that if you have a very little one, you'll notice a cat on every single page in both Intersection Allies and Love Without Bounds. So we often play Spot the Cat. So the illustrations are meant to both convey the theoretical meaning of the book, but also to make culture really feel alive. Ashley is also an anthropologist herself. So it was really sort of a perfect match in her ability to think, both on like the artistic level and on like the scholarly level around how to visualize intersectionality. So you'll notice there's kind of like a printmaking like allusion to the art that sort of represents like the overlapping nature of our identities. And yeah, she's amazing. You can find her work on Instagram at Seal Smith, SEILSMITH. And she's, our fourth member of CLC Collective.
I saw a question in there about releasing the book in Spanish and the rhyming, which makes me happy. A couple of questions. So the question, are there plans to release Love Without Bounds in Spanish like Intersection Allies? Thank you for that question. So we haven't thought about that yet, but if we were to, we definitely are, have some contacts for some creative writers to work with them who are Spanish speaking creative writers and make sure we get the flow and the themes across. Carolyn and Chelsea, did you want to add anything else to that? It'll be exciting.
Yeah, so we did translate Intersection Allies with one of our really good friends, Dario, who studies bilingual education. It's super hard to maintain rhyme and to also maintain sort of like a conceptual level in another language. So we have learned a lot for the first time. I think we might be down to try it again. But yeah, that is a whole process on its own. So if there's demand for it, let us know and we'll talk to our publisher.
And I just want to say, I love this comment. Carolyn noted this early in the chat, but the rhymes are beautiful. Was it a challenge to get them just right? Thank you for that. And so a little backstory about why we even do rhyming in our books. Well, to answer your question, yes, it was hard. It was challenging, but we kept working at it. I have a funny joke that I will write something and the next thing I know, Chelsea and Carolyn will wordsmith it and it would just be even more beautiful. I'm like, wow, this is great. So 3 different levels of rhyming. But some people actually don't like our rhyming in our books sometimes. There's some feedback that we've gotten, and we've been resilient to sticking with rhyming because we wanted to honor the way that many children of color learn. Their first learning is through rhyming, and that rhyming is a commonplace in Black communities in terms of like style and aesthetics. And we wanted to honor that way of learning and thinking. And so thank you for supporting the rhyme. Love that comment.
Rhymes aren't so trendy in kids lit right now.
Not right now. So happy to hear that folks love it.
Ooh, also want to shout out that Jane mentioned their online book group, radicalreadersmentoring.org, led by high school mentors reading with younger kids. That sounds amazing. So Jane, maybe we should get in touch. We would love to support. All right, we have just about 5 minutes left before we hit the hour. Any other burning questions or things that we can share about the process? We would love to. Oh, yeah. Okay. A question around what we may be planning for future books. Can you share? Inquiring minds want to know. Yes. Okay. So We do have another book planned. So our first book, Intersection Allies, was implicitly around safety. This book is around families. So if you don't know Dr. LaToya, the love doctor, her research is around families. So it was a perfect match. And so we have talked about how we can highlight each one of our research expertises in our new books. So we are planning a book on bodies. So for those of you who don't know, my research is around beauty, politics, and race across the African diaspora. So bodies and embodiment are sort of my thing. So we have a book on bodies planned. And Dr. Carolyn's research is on migration. So we also have a book about migration and culture planned too. So stay tuned for that. Once we wrap up this book tour, we're going to probably be ramping up on Intersection Allies books 3 and 4. Yay, we hope to be back to the Carl. Thank you so much. And Courtney, let us know how we can wrap it up. Any shout outs you want to do with the Carl?
Oh, I mean, my shout outs are to the 3 of you. Thank you, LaToya and Chelsea and Carolyn. That was just so wonderful and inspiring. I think I could say on behalf of all of us, you just kept us, completely engaged with not only your beautiful book, but also your questions and reflections that you shared with us. So I think I'm excited to get the book back in my hands. I'm excited about the new books that are coming out. Thank you for sharing all of your work. We have lots of links in the chat. Please check out CLC Collective, and thank you for joining us today. If you're interested in joining in more programs at the Carl, just check out our website. It's carlmuseum.org. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Courtney, for an awesome kickoff to our book tour. We hope to be at a city near you, virtually and in real life. So if you have a classroom or a group or a library community that you would love to see Love Without Bounds or Intersection Allies in, you can always reach out to us. So I'll put our contact info on how we can keep in touch on the screen. You can hit us up at intersectionallies@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at intersectionallies. And you can learn more about our work at clccollective.com. So thank you again so much, Courtney. We totally appreciated this. I had an amazing time, and I know that Dr. LaToya and Dr. Carolyn did too. So we wish you all a lovely evening with your families this evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. And also remember all this great information on the slide that Chelsea's sharing, and that we're recording this. So this will be on the Carl's YouTube page. I think we all feel like this is a video that we need to share and send out to colleagues and friends. So that'll be up on our page soon. Thank you. Good night, everyone.